Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Mysteries Unknown. Tonight we got a really cool podcast. I have Greg on the line, and Greg is a government investigator, so he's going to be talking to us about some of his experience with Bigfoot and other mysteries and things. He's actually done a movie called The Legend of Downey, Booger. So I got him on here tonight. I'm going to let him jump right into it and tell us some of the things that's happened to him. Greg, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. A little bit about me. I started, in the Bigfoot world, and I guess I say this field, in about 2013. I started as a side hustle or a side hobby because I was tired of the hunting and fishing scene, right? So one of the things about me is, I wanted to enhance what I was doing. So I took some of the skills that I learned as an investigator, and I just brought to my hobby, so to speak. So I'm very good at documenting by film. So while I was out investigating, Sasquatch and the legend of Sasquatch, it kind of dawned on me like, hey, while I'm already documenting, why can't I make a film, right? How hard can it be, right? How hard can it be? Well, 10 years later, here it is, the legend of the Downey Booger. But I had no idea what I was getting into because let me assure all of your viewers that there is a whole lot more to making a film than just taking out a camera and pushing record, right? So it took us several years to get our feet wet as far as making a documentary. But we came across some really, really cool situations, even from the first get-go. From the first get-go, we came across 16-inch tracks out in the middle of the woods. We found a pond. These 16-inch tracks came down to the pond, went around the pond, and then back out into the field. We're like, hey man, there's nothing to this. Nothing to it. We can do it. We're going to prove it, right? So, we sit there, we're documenting this, and my own camera skills were very much lacking at that time. And I kind of look back on it, it's like, oh my gosh, that's so terrible. So we didn't use that much in the film, but it was such good evidence, A quarter mile away, we found this big giant field where we saw these same footprints, except we saw this big bird nest thing kind of sitting over on its side. We're kind of investigating this, and it looked like a bird's nest, but it was right beside a game trail, and like, well, maybe it's more of a hunting block. So anyway, out coming from this bird's nest, blind thing, whatever it was, there were these footprints again. 16 inches long, 7 inches wide. But unlike over at the pond, which was a quarter mile away, they weren't 5.5 feet apart. They were 8.5 to 9 feet apart. So we sort of surmised that maybe it was using that as a hunting blind, and that was a deer trail that come by, and it was an ambush spot. So it was chasing down its prey. We came across other things, like there was these bat houses that was put up by the forestry department at the edge of this big field. And we come across these, they were put up by 4x4 posts. And on the 4x4 posts, one of them had these fingerprints on it. There were 4 fingerprints on one side, and on the same face, there was a thumbprint. So whatever put these fingerprints on there had a hand big enough to reach all the way around 4x4 posts. And we're like, wow, these are amazing. There's not going to be nothing to this. We're going to solve this mystery in no time. And we did not know how lucky we were to find that evidence, because it is so rare. So rare. We haven't come across physical evidence like that since then. But there were other things that we came across in making our films as we delved deeper into this rabbit hole. There was one day we were over in Georgia, and we're, of course, out in the middle of the woods in the middle of the night, and these balls of light appear. And it's a time of year where there's no lightning bugs. And these are self-sustaining luminous phenomena. I don't know what they are. I'll call them orbs, for lack of another term. So these things captivated me. And we did notice that whenever we started seeing these things, we had other activity to come across us, like wood knocks, whoops, other sounds like a pop sound like that. We would hear that quite often. Whistles, we would hear that often. And sometimes we'd come across smells. A lot of people report that they smell a pungent, musky, type smell. But what we encountered was more of a sweet smell. It's very hard to describe. It was very, very sweet smelling. It almost made you want to inhale more. It's like, oh man, it smells good. I mean, what is it? And it would come and go. So there was one. We started to expand our investigative territory, and we went to the mountains of North Georgia. In some of these mountains of the North Georgia, we encountered more of these orbs, and there was one expedition in particular where we were coming over this hill. There was 4 of us, and the leader of our little group had a FLIR, and it's a very, very nice FLIR. It is military grade. How she got a hold of it, I don't know, but anyway. So we're going over this little hill, and we spot something on the FLIR, and at first we think it's a rock, or because it's warm-ish during the day, but at night it's very cold. So everything around is cold, but this object that we're looking at is very hot. So there's bears in the area, so we're like just waiting to see if maybe it's a bear. So we're waiting for about 7-8 minutes, and then this rock starts to move like this. And we're like, oh, wait a minute. Rocks don't sway. Rocks don't rock. You know what I mean? So we're like, okay, this is something else. So about that time it started to rock, we hear objects coming through the woods like pebbles or acorns or something from a different direction. And from experience, we know that Sasquatch have a tendency to come in groups. And one will distract you so that another one might be able to get away. So we're telling Angela, hey, don't take the FLIR off, because this thing, whatever's coming through the woods, is just a distraction. Just keep the FLIR on it. So these objects kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And finally it got to the point to where, they went from small pebbles to big rocks. And about the time that it started to get to where it was big rocks thrown, the object stands up. And we all say at the same time, it stood up. And when it stands up, you can see the face, you can see the arms, the hands, the individual hands, because his hands is down like this, right? And it kind of made this kind of motion with his hands. And, with FLIR, I don't know how tall it was, but it got out of the FLIR range, so it was pretty tall. But she picked it up, and you could see literally its face. And it had a really wide mouth. It didn't look like it had a lot of lips to speak of. But the eyes were seemingly further apart than, what ours would be. And it was, it was just it was breathtaking. And as this thing stood up, something like the size of a big log came, being thrown from that same direction as those other rocks were. And since there's a lot of bear in the area, Angela, she has this FLIR. She does this, to make sure that it's not a bear, and then comes back. I mean, it's literally this, nothing there, come back. And when she comes back, the object's gone. Nowhere to be found, gone. We didn't hear it take off or what. And I have no explanation as to what happened. However, it's not the first time that had happened. Not the first time, or not the last time, say. In our film, we're on our last investigation, and it's been years. We're plugging on at it for 2.5 years, going on 3. And I said, guys, it's time to end this. And we were not having any luck getting Bigfoot on night vision, right? We wanted to get Bigfoot on night vision, and we weren't having any luck with that. So I was like, look, guys, we see these orbs all the time, quite often, as a matter of fact. So let's go somewhere where we see the orbs, and we can capture these orbs on film. We rented a real high-end camera with real high ISO, so that we would be shooting passively at night and not actively shooting any kind of beam at all, no IR or anything. So we have this theory that maybe Sasquatch can see into the IR range a little, somewhat, and therefore avoid our cameras. So anyway, the night is going on, and I have a thermal imager, with me, and we see this thing crawling down a hill, and it gets to a point where it's like a log, and it kind of pushes up on a log and kind of comes back down, and it disappears from a FLIR. I mean, we visually saw it disappear. Just, I don't know what happened. And we're sitting there talking about that, and like, man, that is the coolest thing, but it's also freaky. What disappears from FLIR? So anyway, but right on cue that night, an orb shows up, and these orbs stick around with you. They're not fleeting. Sometimes they are, but from what we were seeing, they would stay for hours. I mean, they would hover around. Sometimes if you walked along, they would follow you. We never were we were never felt like we were in danger or anything like that. It was just a really cool phenomenon. So Brett, he's my camera guy. He was in the process of filming one of these orbs, and there's a storm that starts to come up, right? So we're like, okay, we got the orb on film. Let's not get ourselves in danger. Let's go. So in post, it's a couple of months later, and Brent's finally going over this footage in post. He calls me and says, Greg, we got something. I'm like, what you talking about? He said, we got something. I got to show you. So, it comes over and he starts showing me the footage, right? So he's sitting there. Sure enough, he gets the orb great on camera. But between us and the orb is this thing crawling. It's crawling on all hands and feet, and it's doing this thing what looks like the spider crawl. So it crawls over here, crawls back, crawls over here, and crawls back out of frame, and then it goes. And the camera tries to focus on it. It's in there, it's trying to focus, and then it gives up and then focuses on the orb. So I don't know how close this thing was to us, but we never saw it, we never heard it while we were there. But that is in our film, and I would really like for everybody to go and take a look at it, because I think it's incredible footage. Because not only do we get one phenomena, we got two. We got an orb, and we've got something that we think's probably a Bigfoot crawling between us and this orb thing. So, I mean, this kind of scratches the surface of some of the encounters that that we had during our journey. But if I want to be perfectly honest, we didn't put 40, 50, 60% of the stuff that we encountered in our film because we think some of the stuff that we encountered was just so out there and so outrageous that, the public at large wouldn't believe it, because I wouldn't have believed it. I didn't, I saw my first ghost out, squatching. I didn't believe in ghosts until I saw one. We experienced things like missing time. We experienced things like electronic failure over and over and over and over. It was like a recurring phenomenon with us. We thought, well, we could catch something that was fantastic on film, and then only to find out either the film was corrupted, the battery just suddenly died, or just, something would always happen, But that's a recurring phenomenon.
Yeah, that happens a lot. You hear a lot about that in this field, that kind of stuff happening. And so I leads me to this question, and I definitely want to bring you back because it sounds like you've got a lot of things to talk about, and I appreciate you taking the time to share that with us. But if you had to guess, and then nobody really knows, but what do you think Bigfoot is? If you had to guess, if you had to put in a box, what do you think Bigfoot is?
Well, I've learned enough on this journey not to have any definites and to keep an open mind about everything. When I first started, I would almost swear to you that there is nothing else other than flesh and blood. When I first started, I could swear to you that balls of energy or light do not exist, because I'd never heard of them to tell you they exist until I saw them. I'd always heard about ghosts, but I would say that they didn't exist until I saw one. So, is it flesh and blood? Sometimes. Because it leaves prints. We can hear it. We can see it on FLIR. But one of the things that kind of puzzles me is that one of those situations that we were talking about in the field, we were following the tracks of footprints, and in the middle of the field, they disappeared. They just disappeared. Where did they go? And trackways are very easy to identify because the tracks are 1 foot in front of another. They're not off to the side like humans walk. So I don't know. I try to keep an open mind to that. I try not to say, it's definitely this or it's definitely that. And I've learned enough not to do that.
Well, that's probably smart, because none of us really know. There's no way to know, I guess, until somebody actually captures one, if that ever happens. But so if they wanted to watch your show, tell us where we can go watch it. What platforms is it on, and how can we find it?
Right, you can do any type of Google search, or a type of Google search, and you can type in The Legend of the Downey Booger. And there's several ways to watch it. It's on Reveal. It's on Tubi TV. It's been accepted into Amazon Prime and I think 8 or 10 different other streaming platforms. But definitely you can watch it free on Tubi TV. It's free with ads, and we would appreciate if you would go out and take a look at it. Everything's real. We didn't have the budget to fake anything, I promise. There may be different interpretations to what you see, but everything is real. And it chronicles our journey from going from complete newbies to being somewhat experienced in the Sasquatch world.
That is awesome. That's awesome. Guys, go check out his movie. Show him support. I can promise you that kind of stuff is not easy to do. Greg, thanks for coming on the show. If you guys have a mystery that you want to talk about, send me an email at video@jscreativear, and we'll see you in the next episode. Peace.